If you want to know who the next representative in Maine's 2nd Congressional District will be, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. The race is once again going to ranked choice voting, but Representative Jared Golden is challenging the decision to turn to ranked choice. According to final results released by the Secretary of State, Golden received about 2,200 more first choice votes than Republican challenger Austin Theriault. The state calculation shows neither candidate received more than 50% of the vote, so now the race must go to ranked choice voting. A piece of that, nearly 13,000 blank ballots, or 3% of the vote. However, the Golden campaign argues Golden won the majority of first choice votes, which they counted without any blank ballots, and placed Golden with 50.2% of the total first choice votes cast. The Secretary of State says, according to state law, blank ballots need to be part of the calculation because they may have a second choice vote.
The big surprise was the number of blank ballots, 12,635. Now, viewers at home might think, oh, blank ballots, why would you count those? Except under Maine law, those ballots may not be blank. Those ballots may be people who wrote in their favorite politician in Maine as a number one in the write-in line, and then Jared Golden or Austin Theriault for number two.
Yesterday, Theriault requested a recount before we knew this race was going to ranked choice voting, but the Secretary of State says any recount will happen after the ranked choice tabulation has been completed. The Theriault campaign released a statement this afternoon saying they've identified some areas of concern in different parts of the state. His campaign says Theriault significantly underperformed other Republicans in Presque Isle, and they have isolated that discrepancy to one voting machine. The campaign says it is working to get more information about the status of the votes that ran through that machine. They also said they have concerns in Eddington, where the town is reporting 852 blank ballots in the CD2 race, which the campaign says is larger than the total votes cast for Golden and Theriault combined. The campaign says it may take weeks to ensure every vote is counted fairly and accurately. Earlier this afternoon, state police started the process of bringing the election ballots from the 2nd Congressional District to Augusta for the ranked choice tabulation and a possible recount. According to the Secretary of State's office, the ranked choice voting tabulation will begin next week.